proceed.
So, Minister, where we left off earlier was the question regarding post-secondary education.
Yes.
And it was specifically, you were about to answer this. What's your ministry doing in conjunction with our respective teaching programs at PSCs across Alberta to attract and retain younger teachers within rural school boards? And I had kind of a supplementary, and I bet you can answer this all at the same time. Is attraction and retention of teachers meeting ministry expectations? And does your ministry collect statistics on the number of teachers who are actually teaching somewhere in Alberta 5, 10, and 20 years down the line after graduating? And also, does your ministry collect statistics on the number of individuals who graduate with a teaching degree but actually never end up teaching because they end up somewhere else?
Yeah, for sure. Well, to your first point, we do have some bursary program that I'm looking to buttress, right? It's not in this budget, but into northern school boards and to rural school boards as well, because I mean, young teachers need to get that experience and to utilize their degree within the first couple of years, I believe, right? I mean, I, as a teacher, took that as a way, the theory of how I ran my career and went to the rural place to get a job, for sure, right? We know that in order to attract people to go and stay in a rural area, you need to have the facilities in place and supports in place too. And again, I'll use Northland because we have Bill 6 up on the order paper now. And I believe that a key to the success of Northland School Division will be the retention and training of teachers, especially First Nations teachers that might come from those communities, you know. And I was up in High Prairie a few months ago, and the few First Nation teachers that had been from Sucker Creek or one of the 3 places around there, and then came back to teach, they were like gold. Like literally, people were like in a bidding war, like Connor McDavid, to get them to teach at their school, right? Because they were modeling positive behaviors for the kids, and they spoke Cree, and they went back to their community, and like, holy smokes, right? So the degree to which we can value that and in our budgets, I think is really important. So we have made a commitment to Northland School Division to the reinstatement of democracy in that board, but also to increasing funding to that school board by 20%, right? And so, hopefully that will help to, put some lifeblood into there. And, when you get a good example of a good example, perhaps Northland will provide us a template for other boards in rural areas that can help us to increase graduation rates and attendance rates too. Those are the measurements I use, right? Like I use graduation rates and attendance rates and say, okay, is that it? Is that, and then that's where I go from there. Do I have statistics on graduates and so forth? I will I will look to see if we do have those.
Because this is going back a while, and we could have some smart aleck comments from the other side. I wouldn't blame you. It's been a long time since I was in the classroom teaching, but I can tell you honestly, when I first moved to Alberta right after the Olympics in '88, it was a big concern then.
Yeah.
And I know it's a big concern now, and it's an ongoing thing. And so obviously we collect these targets for a reason, and we got to do something about it because it's anyway. That's a whole other conversation.
No, that's and it's where it's not an easy. I mean, the reality is that some rural school boards, their populations are going down, right? And the population in Alberta is going up for kids, but some other ones are going down. So we need to be creative to build facilities and places to live for the teachers and so forth to meet the needs for now and then 20 years down the road. So, I made a point of, let's say, not in the north, but building the new school in Irma, Alberta, which I think maybe has 600 people living there, maybe a little bit less, but it's a right size of a building of a school, so that you have a brand new school, maybe it's a little bit smaller, but then it could be a community hall too and a community center, so that, because these schools, of course, are not just a place from 9 to 3 in the afternoon, and
Right.
it can be used for all kinds of stuff. And so I mean, by creating that kind of interest, that I hope that maybe we can help with teacher retention too, right? Some focus of right-sizing schools and building some of the facilities and then even teacherages in the north, so that there's a reasonably nice place for the teachers to stay.
Thanks for that, Minister. Now, also on page 54 of the business plan, I promised I'd come back to this, the reference to Alberta's education system being well-governed and managed. Perhaps you've heard these concerns, as have I, about reduction in credit enrollment units, or CEUs, having a negative impact on smaller school boards.
Yeah.
And then there's programs such as RAP and the Green Certificate could be negatively impacted because these programs are funded by the small overages obtained by CEUs.
Yes.
And so, Mr. Chair, given that key strategy 1.5 refers to introducing career and technology foundations programs, the question is, how are you ensuring the health of programs like RAP and Green Certificate in the face of CEU reductions, and will the reduction in the ability of schools to certain fees impact the feasibility of programs like this? I guess that's the bottom line.
Yeah, no, that's a very good analysis, and I do recognize that the CEU reduction, grant reduction, does have an impact on some boards, and of course the ones that or the scenarios that you described are, often rural boards, like so the green certification program and so forth might be jeopardized, right? So we, first of all, let me say globally across the province, we've now hit a point where there's more schools in the high school redesign program than there is in the traditional credit programming. And so we've hit that sort of Rubicon of, and then, so for the majority of are not even running a credit, like that system, and wouldn't be affected. And then, again, it wasn't easy because I really didn't want to cut grants when I was trying to look for the money to save money so that I could do this school fee thing. So with the CEUs, the average amount of students or amount of credits is like 37 units, I think. And so I thought that the reduction that we made wouldn't impact too much people who are still using that system. And for those who are, and so the Green Certificate is a good example. I recognize the value of that, and I certainly will have an announcement in regards to helping with that here very soon. I don't want to scoop myself, right? So
No, that's okay, and I look forward to the invitation to be there.
We just completed a review on that, and we know that it will be valued by actions, judge me on my actions. Like with the RAP, another program that you mentioned, right?
Yes.
RAP program is also being assessed right now. I believe in its value. One of my kids did use that program when, and so I believe that people can help us to assess the value of that, and that would be helpful. So yeah, I recognize that there are some boards that did feel a reduction as a result of the CEU funding decrease, but I'm hoping to mitigate that by speaking to them individually and trying to buttress some of their programming collectively.
Well, and speaking of boards and numbers, performance measure 5.5 states you'll monitor school boards with reserves of over 5% of their operating expenses. So can you bring the Albertans up to date in terms of which school boards are on your radar in terms of exceeding this number? Because, Minister, we both know this varies wildly, with some boards having little to no reserves, and others having an extraordinary amount of money being tucked away.
Yes, I do recognize that, and we have to just remind ourselves where that reserve fund, where it comes from in the first place, right? And so, we've been funding schools by a per student funding mechanism for quite a few years now, right? And so that's where they're getting it from somehow. We give them so much per kid, and then somehow the reserves, some people, and I think it's not unreasonable to have some reserve in place for
Sure, but can
whatever
you identify
contingencies.
certain places that are
Yeah,
on the radar?
exactly. And and I don't want to prejudice the overall circumstance, because of course if we say anything that would, suggest a run on reserves, then of course they could spend them all too. So I have no plan for anything at the moment, right? But
Okay, then let's switch gears, because I
yeah,
know what
well,
you're
that's
saying.
it.
As long as Albertans
Yeah.
are aware of this and that's something
well, they
needs
do. I
to be
mean, they're
done.
very people are very aware.
Apologize to
I mean, those reserves
interrupt, but the
are there, and I want people to use it.